Hello everyone, this is MC Deck Discussions and I'm Abby Small, and today we're here for another deck discussion. Before I get into that, I wanted to mention to please like and subscribe and comment. Helps the channel to grow, and the comments I just like having conversations with people. And I wanted to make a quick reminder here, or state a quick reminder here, that I'm happy to feature other people's decks here too, and also build decks for others based on their collection. And even if you're just curious about comparing how I might build a deck compared to one that you've built, whatever reason you want is fine with me. In any case, let's get into this deck now, this deck discussion. So the name of this deck is Hit Me, I Dare You, which is a She-Hulk protection deck, 40 cards in it, which is important in this case. I really pared this down. I started off with, I think, 44 cards in the deck. And if you actually take a look here at my deck refinements, you can see I removed a ton of cards from this deck and then replaced it with 6 other cards. It took some real refining. I actually play tested this deck more than most decks because I was having trouble with it doing what it needed to do from a solo perspective. So when I first created the deck, it really had a lot more readying for She-Hulk, but even when I built it, I was concerned about how much it could take care of the thwarting that was necessary. And time again, I discovered that it just wasn't quite there until now. So I feel really good about this deck. So usually I play test a deck maybe 8 or 9, maybe 10 times. This deck I play tested 15 times. So I had a chance to really revise it until I was happy with it. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing is, I'll just go ahead and mention real quickly, here are the villains that I did test against, both in Standard and Expert: Claw, Unis, Dark Beast, and Magneto. And I did find, time and time again, every single one of these villains, when I was in Expert mode, I was having some serious troubles, which led to so much deck refinement. Okay? But by the end here, like I said, I was very happy with it. So let's start off with the key card. So if we look down here at the notable elements of play, we have 4 key supports or upgrades that are the engine of the deck. So let's look at those right here. So first of all, we have Dr. Sinclair. So she's really important for this deck. So one of the things about She-Hulk is she likes to ready, especially after she has attacked, right? She has 3 cards that allow her to ready in her own deck, which is the 1-2 punch. But then in addition, we added 3 limitless stamina to this deck that allows her to ready. And she doesn't have, other than her huge attack, which is the Gamma Slam, which costs 4 to play, she doesn't have any other cards that do any kind of significant damage, right? She has another card, the Ground Stomp, that I've never used a single time the whole time I've ever played with She-Hulk. So I might as well count it as her not having any events that attack at all, and very little with regard to thwarting either. So she has to be available. She can't be stunned. You can't have her stunned, and you can't have her confused. And in this particular case, you also don't want her. You want her to recover from her damage. So Dr. Sinclair is key to that, and especially in this deck where she's going to be going to Alter Ego highly frequently. Which I'll talk about real quickly after this card, actually. So I'll go to another card after this and then come back to this one. So there's Dr. Sinclair, is a 2-cost support with Persona and Therapist. And she has this Alter Ego action: exhaust Dr. Sinclair and spend a mental resource. So you do have an extra cost even after you've played it. Heal damage from your Alter Ego equal to your recovery. You may discard 1 status card from your identity, such as a Confuse or Stun. Any player may trigger this ability. Now, I played this solo, so of course, that could be used here too in a multiplayer deck. Okay, so why was that so critical? And that's because we're going to go to Alter Ego a lot. So first of all, Professor X can facilitate that with some confusing, though that wasn't the main catalyst for going down to Alter Ego. The main one was ready for a fight. So this is what the deck was built around, was the ability to use this card here. So this is a 1-cost upgrade, is a preparation, has the requirement, a physical requirement to play it. And we do have quite a few physical requirements, cards in this deck. So that is typically being met from those other cards, including its own card. And it has this interrupt: when an enemy would scheme, discard ready for a fight, change to hero form, that enemy attacks you instead. So this is a fantastic card for when you're getting ready to when you want to, first of all, prevent any kind of scheming whatsoever, but also especially when you are in alter ego form. So this card facilitates that, but there are only 3 of those. And it might surprise you to learn that I didn't include that other upgrade that allows you to, if an upgrade just left, if a preparation, just left, then you can put it back into your hand from your discard pile. I had that in here to begin with, 1 copy of it. I can't remember what it's called right now. I'll look that up in a minute. But I decided not to include it. And the reason I didn't end up needing to include it was, first of all, that actually ended up taking up a valuable spot in my deck. And secondly, I ended up with a lot of card draw in this deck. So the ready for a fight was showing up highly frequently. So we'll talk about that card draw in a bit. Let's go back to these other key cards. So there are 4, like I said, there are 4 key cards. One of them is Dr. Sinclair. Another one is Quincarrier. Quincarrier sure can be used to generate a wild resource, just period. The nice thing is you can only play it if your identity has the Avenger trait, which She-Hulk does on her hero side, right? So she has the Avenger and Gamma traits on her hero side, the Attorney and Gamma traits on her other side. Okay. But on top of that, as a resource generator, you can use it in alter ego side. And so this I typically was saving. If I knew I was going to go to alter ego side, I was typically saving Quincarrier to use with Dr. Sinclair to guarantee that I would have a mental resource to be able to use for this. And She-Hulk's recovery is 5. So if we look at her stats, let's look at those real quickly. So in hero form, she has 1 thwart, 3 attack, 2 defense. She has 15 hit points and a hand size of only 4. And she has this ability, which we'll come back to later, but I wanted to mention it now. So do you even lift? A response after you change to this form, deal 2 damage to an enemy. So might as well say up front, right? That's going to happen a lot in this deck because we're going to alter ego frequently, and also because ready for a fight will turn you back to hero side. So that triggers that 2 points of damage, which is not attack damage either. And then in her alter ego side, though, she has a recovery of 5, which is huge, and a full hand size of 6. And she has this ability, I object, an interrupt when threat would be placed on a scheme, prevent 1 of that threat. It's a limit of once per round. And so this card here, so Quincarrier can help with Dr. Sinclair to be able to use her ability and be able to, first of all, like I said, discard a status card from She-Hulk, but also to heal her for 5. And very, very often it would happen in this game because we're getting attacked a lot because of the card Taunt that we'll talk about later. So She-Hulk's, even though she has 15 hit points, she heals herself a lot. So a lot of times you'll have 5 + 5, 10 healing occur in a single round, because she'll have to heal herself pretty often as well. All right. So, and then the other 2 key cards. So these 4 cards I'm mentioning are really kind of, you might consider the engine of the deck that you need to have in play before you're really ready to start, doing the big stuff you need to do and attacking the villain. And so those other 2 cards are Focused Rage. So these are 3 costs. These come in her deck, but they're important to mention because, we need, these cards are what help to facilitate everything else really happening in the deck, right? So they're skill cards, cost of 3, and it has a hero action, exhaust Focus Rage and take 1 damage, draw a card. It is a hero action, so she can only use this on her hero side, but she has 2 copies of these. So because these cards are so critical, that's why we also have 2 player side schemes in this deck. Build support, really to help get Quincarrier in. If Quincarrier happens to already be in, we can use it for Dr. Sinclair. And superpower training in order to get one of those Focused Rages in play. Right? Okay, so once you have those in play, now you're ready to start going. But let's go ahead and mention next the allies here. Right? So we already mentioned ready for a fight that this is built around, but the allies are key. Until I got these allies, just right here, I found I just couldn't handle the thwarting in this deck. And so one of the key cards, certainly Nick Fury does his usual thing. He draws cards, does awesome things. Okay? But multiple man is important to mention here. So when you play multiple man, it's a cost of 4, but there are 3 copies of him. And so he has, only 1 attack and 1 thwart and only 2 health. And he's an X Factor ally. But his response is, after multiple man enters play, search your deck and hand for a copy of multiple man and put it into play. Shuffle your deck if it was searched this way. So when you play 1 copy of multiple man, you end up with 3 of these out there. So even though they only have 2 health, you end up with the ability to do as many as 3 thwart and 3 attack and spread that around any way that you need to. And so typically in this deck, it would be used for thwarting, but though here and there, it'd be used for attack. But in addition to that, over the course of 2 rounds, you could then have that be a total of 6 thwart. And I very often would use it for that. Or here and there, I might ping off a tough with one of them. Or maybe She-Hulk was about to defeat some minion and just needed one more point of damage to finish them off. In addition, maybe I save 2 of them to use all of their thwarting and attacking, and one of them I use to defend against the villain. Or maybe I need to save a couple of them to defend against the villain. So that proved to be very helpful, although it was very frustrating multiple times when I was playing Magneto. I would, each of them would come out and they'd each do 1 thwart, and then Magneto would attack, and then he'd draw that card that does 1 damage to every single ally or every single one of your characters. So, and it just wipes them off the board. Very frustrating. That happened multiple times. But overall, still a great strategy, and multiple man was highly effective in this deck. Speaking of Magneto, one of the cool things was that when you use multiple man, so let me find multiple man. Okay. So when you use multiple man in this deck, very often when he was playing against Magneto, that I found that, where is this? Oh, maybe I didn't say it. Oh, yes, here it is. So Magneto starts the game with this boarding party side scheme in play. And it takes 3 thwart if you're playing in 3, it has 3 threat if you're playing in solo. So you get rid of boarding party with when multiple man first comes out at the beginning of the game, if you draw him in your opening hand, and then it flips over and becomes the sabotage scheme. And then your next turn, you do 3 more thwart with those 3, and you have defeated both of those, and you have yourself out of one of the major elements of danger in Magneto's deck. So it's really nice to be able to do that, just have that gone in your first 2 turns. All right, and then another important ally of note, for a different reason than you might think, is Professor X. So Professor X is famously known for his ability to confuse the villain, but sometimes in this deck, I actually didn't want to confuse the villain, and instead wanted to allow Ready for a Fight to trigger when I was in alter ego form. And that's not going to happen if if the villain doesn't get a chance to go ahead and scheme. So sometimes I actually didn't use it for that, and especially if a strong villain were out, and I would instead go ahead and use his other ability. So that happened more times. Oops, not that one, Professor X. That happened more times than I've ever had happen. It didn't happen every game for sure, but it happened frequently enough that it was notable that a lot of times I used him to stun a minion, and of course used his 3 thwart, which is another important element for him. And then the other thing is too, Lockjaw. So I've used Lockjaw in other decks in the past, but I have never used Lockjaw. So I should say I put Lockjaw in lots of decks in the past. So for example, many of my Magneto decks have Lockjaw, and I'll play a lot of games where Lockjaw never ends up in play. But in this deck, I would say maybe every game, maybe not quite every game, but could be. But I had Lockjaw out in play a lot of times, multiple times. He can be played. His advantages, he's 4 cost, right? And you may play Lockjaw from your discard pile during your turn, paying his resource cost, which makes him, when he's being played, basically equivalent to being played from your hand for a cost of 3. Because if you have a 3 cost ally that you play from your hand, it costs you, 4 cards. And the same would go if you play Lockjaw from your discard pile. So it's equivalent to playing a 3 cost card from your from your hand. And so playing Lockjaw is very nice here for that, because either way it costs you 4 cards in your hand. And so putting him into play, and especially doing so when I knew my discard pile was about to run out, which happened frequently because there's lots of card draw in this deck. And so with him, when I found that, I really felt like, I should get him into play so I can have him available. And I would go ahead and do that. He'd come out, do 2 thwart. I'd save him out in play, wouldn't usually defend with him then, and then let him do 2 more thwart. Sometimes I might defend with him, but more often than not, I would want to use him for 2 more thwart the next turn. And then you could always play him the very next turn for 2 more thwart. So he could become significant for helping you out, especially in a deck like She-Hulk's, where she could really use that assistance with the thwarting. Okay? All right. So those were the 3 I want to mention. The other ones I think are mostly kind of obvious, although it should probably be noted which Spider-Man this is. This is Miles Morales, who he has this response after you play him from your hand. Choose thwart or attack, and Spider-Man gets +2 to the chosen power until the end of the phase. Typically, I gave him +2 thwart. I might have one time used him for attack, I think at the end of a game to finish off a villain. But other than that, it was mostly +2 to the thwart so that he could thwart for 3. And then on his next turn, then I would have him attack for 2. All right. So that's it really for the allies. So let's move on to take a look at where the card draw comes from. So we have, like we said, multiple resources. First of all, we already have, where was it? It's just a focused rage, right? Our 3-cost cards. You take 1 in hero form. You can take 1 damage to your hero and draw a card, right? So there are 2 of those. In addition to that, we have 3 copies of Taunt, right? So the villain attacks you. Other characters cannot defend against this attack, so you draw 3 cards, which means in this deck, She-Hulk is basically, her health is a major resource of this deck. And there were many times when I would use Taunt more than once in a particular round. Particular turn, right? So those were key. Limitless stamina is in here that readies her, and then we also had, that's not a card draw card, and then of course we also have Nick Fury, right? So that's 3, 4, 5, 6 cards that all draw. And then we also have Ironheart, which Ironheart is actually still important in this deck because you essentially use 3 cards in your hand, and that still leaves 1 card in your hand. And a lot of times drawing just 1 card was just enough to play. She has a lot of 1-cost cards in her hand. So there are a lot of expensive cards in here, but these 1-2 punches only cost 1. Her limitless stamina only costs 1. Endurance only costs 1. Ready for a fight only costs 1. And so some of these are really important cards that only cost 1. And so playing Ironheart was very often just what you needed in order to play just a 1-cost card. So lots of elements that can allow you to do card draw, which allowed us to play Ready for a Fight frequently and go down to Alter Ego side, right? And going down to Alter Ego side, let us have that 6. Ending on Alter Ego side, let us have a hand size of 6 on that next turn and get to set everything up again. The important thing being there, you ended up with a hand size of 6. When the villain goes to scheme, you use Ready for a Fight and end up on your hero side at the beginning of your turn, allowing you to end up on your Alter Ego side again and get a hand size of 6 again instead of a hand size of 4. So the more often you could have that happen, the more cards you could have in your hand. And then once you used Focused Rage, you could be starting a hand size with 6, use Focused Rage, and now you have 8 cards in your hand. And no matter what, 6 cards in your hand, even if you had to start in your hero form, which is part of why Focused Rage was so important to this deck. All right, and then let's go ahead and mention some more cards here for the upgrades. Right, so if we go down to some of the other upgrades, Superhuman's Strength, which is one of her cards. This is important to mention. So some of you may know this already, maybe a lot of you, but Superhuman Strength. So let's click on that. Okay. So this is a 2-cost card, and She-Hulk gets +2 attack with it. Has this forced response after She-Hulk attacks, discard Superhuman Strength. stun the attacked enemy. So that can be really nice to stun your enemy with it. But there are a lot of times when you'd love to just keep this +2 attack indefinitely. And in this deck, most of the time, that's what I did. So here and there, I might go ahead and use this ability to go ahead and stun the villain so they couldn't act on their own turn, the next time. But there were a lot of times when I just kept this on hand, because if you cannot stun the attacked enemy, this ability this force response does not trigger, and you get to continue to have the +2 attack. So then that means that She-Hulk has, instead of her usual 3 attack, now she has 5 attack, and she has 2 copies of that, so she could get as much as 7 attack. Most games, I end up with 5 attack, and I would typically use her to finish off minions a lot, keep the board clean with that. She didn't attack the villain as often, a lot of times waiting until she could defeat the villain to do so in order to keep this in hand. But if necessary, we had the ability to also use that ability and stun the villain. But most of the time, so like if you defeat an enemy like a minion, then you can't stun that enemy. So since you can't stun that enemy, you end up keeping this card in your hand, once again. So very cool being able to use superhuman strength and be able to keep it on your character for a long time. In addition, when you're playing Magneto, if he gets his armor on, then he cannot be stunned. And so this card, you never get rid of this card for as long as that armor is on him. All right, let's get to the events and how most games ended. So the big events here, so Gamma Slam I'll just go to this part right now. This is how most games ended. So a final attack with up to 15 points of damage, especially if you had endurance on, right? You get +3 hit points. She has 15 hit points. So how Gamma Slam works is it's a 4-cost event, and you deal X damage to an enemy to a maximum of 15, where X is the amount of damage you have sustained. So however much damage you have sustained is the amount of damage you can do, up to 15. And so endurance is nice for making it so you could do that actual 15. But I'd have a lot of games where maybe I would do 10 points of damage with Gamma Slam, and then finish off the villain with more attacks. Or I even had, for example, my final game against Magneto in Expert, then I had Magneto down to just a couple of points. I couldn't quite finish him off, or 1 point and I was going to win. But I happened to have one more Ready for a Fight in hand. So I played Ready for a Fight, went over to Alter Ego side, and then when Magneto activated, I flipped back to this side, and She-Hulk used her Do You Even Lift response. And after you change to this form, deal 2 damage to an enemy, and destroyed Magneto that way. Destroyed a lot of minions that way too, by the way, where I go, oh, I don't actually have to finish off the minion right now. I can just deal maybe 3 damage to them. And I know I have Ready for a Fight in play, and when I flip back down to the other side, I can then finish off that minion. So that occurred a lot as a strategic play to make sure so that I could optimize whatever else I need to do on the board, which usually had to do with mitigating threat that was on the board, trying to get rid of that threat. And then another card I wanted to mention in this deck, because until this deck, I never had used this card. So this is Legal Practice, and I played She-Hulk, a decent number of times through the years, and it has a cost of 0. It has an Alter Ego action. Choose and discard up to 5 cards from your hand. Remove 1 threat from a scheme for each card discarded this way. So I would find that sometimes I would end up in Alter Ego side, didn't have any other cards to play, maybe 3 cards, and one of them was this. Then I would just play this card and remove a couple of thwart. And then because I was ending up in Alter Ego side, I would then know that I'm getting 6 new cards in my hand. So if I didn't see those other cards as being valuable to keep, I would just get rid of them all, get rid of some more threat, keep myself in a safer situation, and be able to get a full hand size of 6 afterwards. So I've never used Legal Practice so much as I've used in this deck. It's not like I used it every game, but I was surprised at how often I did actually use this card. All right, and then the last card I want to mention is, where is that one? there. Here it is, split personality. So I've heard a lot of people or seen a lot of people talk about this card in the past that they use it. It sounds like pretty frequently, but I found I hardly ever used this card when I was playing it. But in this deck, I used it a ton. I think it had to do with how much card draw we had and just how often we were ending up on both sides. And because I got to see how valuable it was to keep going back and forth to hero side and back to the alter ego side. Just I used this card a bunch, and I'm guessing probably because I could end up in alter ego side as my finish was so valuable to be on that alter ego side that I ended up using it a lot more than normal. Plus, I could take a risk. So let's suppose I'm starting on hero side. I use this. I've played some of my other cards, or one other card maybe, and then I use this card, get a full hand size of 6. So right here's the ability: change your hero, change your form, right? And then draw up to your printed hand size. So you'd use this to flip over to your alter ego side and get 6 new cards in your hand. Well, because you haven't yet flipped on your own, you can still flip back to hero side if you need to. So you could take a risk with this card, go to your alter ego side, get a bunch of cards in your hand, and possibly end up getting ready for a fight, be able to play that and stay in alter ego. Or if you don't get ready for a fight, or if you don't get, say, Professor X to confuse the villain, then you could go back down to your hero side again as your single flip and just end up there and know that you're not in danger. So I've never used that card so much as I used it in this deck. It was very cool to just use it. It felt like almost every single game where I was using that, and sometimes multiple times, because I did go through my deck quite frequently. All right, that's it for this deck. Everybody have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Or I guess you'll hear me next time, and maybe I'll read your comments. Have a good one, everybody.